Hi, this is the lecture for European history for Monday, the 12th of April, 2021. Um, a totalitarian regime is a regime that abides no limits. Now, we talked a little bit about this stuff in theory, but there are a few more things I want to hit before we go into the bullshies. Um, Number one, the structure of power is the citizen or subject of the society at the bottom. They are, in effect, property, wholly owned by the state, who is wholly owned by the party, who is wholly owned, if there is one, by a charismatic leader. So the power structure flows. At the bottom are the people. Above them is the government, the state, the official constituted lawmaking body, which is the top of our society in terms of lawmaking and law enforcement. However, in a totalitarian society, the government is just another tool. Of whom? Of the party. The party is the vanguard of the future. They are the ones who have an understanding of how we get from here to utopia. As such, the party is above the law. The law and the government is made to serve the party. So, one of the best gifts you can give yourself in trying to understand the situation today with the Communist Party of China is to remember that every single corporation in China has to have a formal and official connection to the Chinese Communist Party. The Chinese Communist Party must have a presence in the boardroom, in the administration, and therefore, all corporate policy is designed to serve party interests. This is true of any company, which is why TikTok was almost banned in this country, because TikTok is a Chinese company. I don't think the ban certainly has not gone through, but there was one proposed. And it's why we don't necessarily want Chinese companies that seem to be private involved in our telecommunications industry or involved in any other industry that has something to do with national security. Because there is no question that any technological edge that we might have would be eroded, because the companies doing business here also serve the interests of the Chinese Communist Party. Within the last 4 to 5 years, President Xi Jinping has made this more clear. From the time of Deng Xiaoping in the mid-1970s to the time of Hu Jintao, president of China around 2010, China was seemingly opening up to business. Now, the Tiananmen Square massacre happened, the persecution of the Falun Gong practitioners, meditation society happened, the public harvesting of organs goes on and has gone on throughout this entire period for profit by the Communist Party. But people were allowed to make money. And the effective deal that the Chinese Communist Party made with its people was, you can make money, but you may not express opinions on political matters that in any way vary from the spirit of the Communist Party of China. And that was the arrangement. And with massive foreign investment, including massive investment from this country, China flourished and prospered. The Chinese Communist Party likes to take credit for this, lifting ridiculous numbers of people out of poverty, forgetting that the Chinese Communist Party put them there, in poverty, in the 1950s and 60s under their Great Leap Forward and Cultural Revolution. They created poverty and then they supposedly lifted people out. No, it was Western investment.
Wait, so how did the organ harvesting factor into the Communist Party and the government?
Okay. As bad as the other totalitarians from the early to mid 20th century were, as much as Jews were used for industrial equipment by the Nazis, including hair as wigs, the skin to lampshades thing is probably an exaggeration. It may have happened once or twice, but it is not something that happened on a large scale. Rendering fat into soap that was then used, yeah, that probably did happen. But no one, until the Chinese Communist Party, thought of using the bodies of political prisoners as organ banks. And organs on the international black market are a huge deal. If you need a spleen or a liver or a kidney or a heart, you need it now. Well, we have legal, safe organ harvesting in the West. A person has to die. If a person is an organ donor, their organs then get used if there is a need, and usually there is. I'm an organ donor. That means when I die, if I have organs that are any good for anyone, somebody may use them. That's my choice. And I expect not to have my life shortened because of that choice. However, in China today, if you have the money, you can make an appointment to get a heart transplant. No one in the West can do that because no one in the West knows when a heart will become available. You get put on a list. When a heart becomes available and it's your turn, they offer it. If you die beforehand, then you die beforehand. That's the system. But today, if you have the money, you need a heart, you can schedule a heart transplant. What does that tell you? That tells you that they will harvest a heart for you at a time of your convenience. And you can be sure it's going to be a good heart, guaranteed. In the weeks and months before execution, political prisoners are fattened up. They're given nutrients so that their organs will be in tip-top shape. So that when they're executed, the organs come out healthy and their brand gets good press. But that's for a heart, which is instant death. If you need a kidney, they'll just pluck a kidney out of a prisoner and leave them with one kidney. If you need a lung, they'll do the same thing. Now, this is ghoulish to me, but it's been going on since I was younger than you. And the Chinese Communist Party profits from it. Remember, if you're accused of a crime in Communist China, you have a 98 to 99% conviction rate, or they have. So they don't charge people who aren't guilty. What does that tell you? That tells you that they have a vested interest in convicting people. Because if you are convicted. But what has happened in recent years, above and beyond that, is people like Jack Ma and other Chinese who have become super famous around the world for being rich. Jack Ma, I think, established the Alibaba company, which is China's version of, oh God, what is it? eBay, I think. In any case, he's recently been disappeared. Because under the current chairman, Xi Jinping, anyone who is Chinese who is not him is supposed to fade into the background and not be an individual. This is a new policy. Xi is reverting to what Mao did in the 50s and 60s, which is to make everything political, communize everything. And so those people who flourished under the system from the 70s until the early 2000 teens are systematically being plucked and accused and convicted of corruption, among other things. And why is it so easy to convict somebody of corruption? Because the whole point of the Chinese system is to reward yourself with power. Everyone is corrupt by our standards, absolutely without exception, because everyone uses their position for advantage. It's not what you do, it's who you know. This is not typical of China. This is typical of a bastard child of Western communist ideas and Qing dynasty ideas that come from the very first Chinese emperor, ideas rejected by the Han dynasty and every dynasty since. It is a pure application of power. Totalitarianism in China today is different from totalitarianism in Germany in the 1930s and 40s, which is different from the Italian variant of totalitarianism in the 1920s, 30s, and 40s, which is different from the Russian variant of totalitarianism, which was present in the 19 teens, 20s, 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s, and 90s. Different from Cuban communism from the 50s through today, Cambodian communism from the mid-1970s to the late 1970s, Vietnamese communism from the 50s through today, and so forth and so on. Korean communism from the 40s through today. So totalitarianism takes on different flavors depending upon the country. It's like, do you want tea? For totalitarians, get it? Tea. And, you got your water. That's the totalitarianism. But the leaves that are put in, are they Darjeeling tea? Are they oolong tea? Are they Earl Grey tea? Are they English breakfast tea? Irish breakfast tea? Is there a difference? Are they Liptons? Are they some variant that you've never heard of? Are they fragrant? Are they not? The national character of countries does affect what kind of totalitarianism you get. Common factor is the party, and maybe the leader, is above the law and can shape everything to their ends. Everything, without exception. So, it is materialistic, utopian. It assumes that dialectical conflict is what produces progress, and it believes in socioeconomic class. Now, what that means is that religion cannot be abided by a totalitarian state. Some totalitarian societies seem to compromise with religion. For example, Italy under Mussolini signs the Lateran Accords, which ends the prisoner of the Vatican stuff from the 1870s. In the 1920s, the Roman Catholic Church and the fascist government of Italy make a treaty. And that treaty guarantees the status of Vatican City as a state. It gives the Catholic Church certain privileges within Italian law and Italian society. And it gives members of the Catholic Church free passage through Italian territory to get to and from Vatican City, the world's smallest independent country. It's the size of a small neighborhood. However, the Roman Catholic Church had to agree to go easy on the political stuff. So people were not going to preach in the pulpit against Mussolini in Roman Catholic churches. Furthermore, if there was a conflict between the church and the state, the church might be allowed to win an occasional symbolic victory, but nothing was to stand in the way of the goal of the fascist government of Italy to turn Italy into a corporative state, which we'll talk more about, but it's basically a state where the party regulates everything, like the central nervous system. In Germany, Hitler, who is not a Christian, and who tries to reestablish a form of pre-Roman German paganism, really isn't interested in religion except as a means of controlling people. He agrees with Karl Marx. Religion is a drug, the opiate of the masses. It can be used to manipulate people. So Hitler tries inventing his own religion. Within the SS, for example, you go through a bunch of neo-pagan Germanic rituals, because the SS is to be to the Nazi Party what the Jesuit order was to the Roman Catholic Church in the Counter-Reformation. The best and the brightest, shock troops of the mind, and so forth. But what Hitler really insisted upon is that the swastika appear on the altar, next to or even above the crucifix or the cross, that the swastika fly from churches. Now, I know that in this country, after World War II, a number of combat veterans came back very proud of their country. They fought for God and country, as if that's one word. And so the American flag is often present on altars. This is not usual. In American history, the flag was maybe in the entryway to celebrate the patriotism of the parishioner. But a Christian church having a state symbol on the altar, like we have flags on our stage, that's a new thing. That's post World War II. That's the sort of thing that Hitler insisted upon. The flag must be on the altar. The flag of the twisted cross, of the swastika, of National Socialism. So, what is the problem that Hitler has with religion? What Hitler wants is what any totalitarian wants. Everything. Control over the economy, control over the media, control over money, control over families, control over education, control over thought, control over the language. If you want to know why I go out of my way to be obnoxious to the politically correct, it's because no one but me owns my words. And if somebody doesn't like the fact that I use BC and AD dates, or I use the word mankind, or other things like that, they can be upset. Then again, I have to ask, who the hell do they think they are trying to modulate what I say? My language is not for them to control. Just as your language outside of this classroom is not for me to control. And even within this classroom, the controls I place are very, 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 very limited. Don't curse your head off. Be reasonably respectful of people, if not of ideas. Attempting to control somebody else's thoughts, expression, to decide what is appropriate and what is problematical, what is acceptable and what is not, that's totalitarian. In a free society, you have no business trying to control what another person says. None. It is not your affair. Now, you can argue with the way they express themselves, but don't ever assume that you have a right not to hear someone else's words. You don't. But in a totalitarian society, language is trimmed like a topiary, like a bonsai tree, so that every expression becomes politically correct. The term politically correct comes out of Soviet Russia. It is their terminology for controlling the language. Power without limit. God has no place in an order like that. Nor does any other independent ideal. Your integrity has no place in a totalitarian society. The one thing I want you to have, if I could gift you anything with your time with me, it would be to encourage you to strengthen your own sense of self and your own integrity, your own sense of right and wrong, which is not mine. It's yours. I believe it was given to you by God. It is your conscience. It is the part of you that judges. It's the part of you that believes. If you learn to be true to that, no one can turn you into a slave. But if you learn to censor yourself, to moderate what you say, to control what you say because you might offend someone, if you're constantly worried about being honest, it will be easier for people to rule you, to use you for their purposes. It'll be out of fear. Because what they'll do is they'll make an example of anyone who stands up to them. And anyone who stands up to them is going to pay. And since most people are averse to suffering, most people will avoid it. And therefore most people will comply. Totalitarians understand this very well. They accept this. And they use terror. Just like Robespierre. When you make it a death penalty offense to say good morning, ma'am, that's terror, designed to scare you into never speaking your mind. And if you never speak your mind, what's the point of having one? Ultimately, you become the person in the 2-Minute Hate in Oceania with Winston Smith and Julia in 1984, cheering mightily and vigorously against the enemy that is Eurasia, that has always been our enemy, and our ally East Asia, which has always been our ally, and our enemy Eurasia, which has always been our enemy, and our ally East Asia, which has always been our ally, and our enemy East Asia, which has always been our enemy, and our ally Eurasia, which has always been our ally, and our enemy East Asia, which has always been our enemy, and our ally Eurasia, which has always been our ally. And anyone who in the midst of that even goes, huh? They're targeted because they're thinking. Nothing must come between the party and your body. No intercessor, no junction box, no interrupter gear, no you. You are the canvas upon which the totalitarians will paint their masterpiece. You will not exist. You will annihilate yourself. What is truth? What the party says. 2 plus 2 is whatever the party says. But it's not simply enough for you to say it. They have little tricks like what I just did, which was from the book, to see if anyone is listening, judging, evaluating, thinking. To see if anyone appreciates truth as anything other than what the party says moment by moment. Moment by moment, the truth is what the party says. Moment by moment, the truth is always what the party said. The party has never been wrong. The party is the sole repository, the sole source, the sole definer of truth. Nothing less than truth. So if the party's color is green, then all other colors are inferior to green. But if at the next moment the party talks about its color red, then the party's color has always been red. And red has always been superior to all other colors. Green, it's a mixture of blue and yellow. Red, there's a color. Totalitarianism abides nothing else. No other gods. No family. No family. Family is replaced by the party. That's why the Komsomols, which are the young Soviet League, or the Hitler Youth, or the Red Guards in China, they're established, not the way the Boy Scouts were in Britain and the United States, to teach young men, to be honest and true and faithful and clean. Not the way the Girl Scouts were established for the same basic purposes for women. The Komsomols and the Hitler Youth and the Red Guards, the Red Pioneers, are the really little ones like brownies. Cub Scouts. They're established so that the young learn that their parents are flawed. Their parents grew up under the old system. Their parents remember a time before Big Brother, a time before the party, a time before the utopia that we're building. And poor beings that they are, your parents will inevitably backslide into thought crime. And it's your job to help correct them. Now, a child, especially a young teenager going through adolescence, has no conscience. They have no sense of limit. If they become a true believer in something, for the most part, that is the truth, capital T, capital T. The worst thing that you can give is 11 to 15-year-olds guns, a little red book that is the truth, and the power of life and death over everyone else in society. This is precisely what Mao does during the Cultural Revolution. He turns the country over to fanatics. And there is no one so fanatical as a 12-year-old in the midst of passion. And the same thing happens to a lesser degree under communism, fascism, National Socialism. Parents end up being afraid of their children because children report their parents' thought crimes. Children see everything. And children, here's a secret, aren't always good. Sometimes children are nasty little bastards. And as such, they can be taught to become sadistic. They can be taught to enjoy making people flinch, to enjoy making people afraid. And that's exactly what the Young Communist League does, the Red Pioneers and the Hitler Youth. It teaches them a higher truth than family, a higher truth than God, a superior truth to their parents. You are the future. You are the vanguard. You are the new wave of change that is coming to make the world a better place. And everything that is old will be swept away by your purity, by your white and shining purity. There is no God that is abided by totalitarianism. There is no family that is abided by totalitarianism. There is no property. Property is essential for freedom because property allows you to say, this is mine. And if you can say this object is mine, your soul is certainly yours. But if you're not permitted to own objects or land or any other material thing, your ability to own your soul, own your body, is also called into question. Instead of being able to say, this is mine, this life, these words, the choices that I make, instead of being able to say, that's mine, no. You have to conform. You have to moderate. You have to trim your sails to be harmonious with whatever the party says. You are not an end unto yourself. You are a means to a greater end. You are a human resource. Love, forget about it. Love is between individuals. Love is between people. To love someone else, you need to be a person. But people in a totalitarian society, the longer they last, if they're not inter-party members, if they're not people connected to the tip-top of the tip-top, they're not raised to be individuals. They're not raised to be people. They're not raised to develop a conscience, an integrity, a set of beliefs. They're raised to perform. They're raised to comply. They're raised to submit. And the world is replete with examples of what happens when you don't comply or submit. Fear will make you betray your loved ones. If a totalitarian wants to get a hold of you, of what's in you, of what you know, they'll place you under the stress of brainwashing, which is a combination of sleep deprivation, torture, and drugs. And it works. Before you are done, before they are done, they will have found out what your greatest fears are. They will have used those greatest fears against you. And you will have turned in your dearest loved ones. You will have betrayed everything that you once stood for. You might even be sent back into the world as an agent provocateur to entrap your loved ones, to use those relationships that people have with you for the party's benefit. When you read 1984, at the end there's a conversation between Winston Smith and Julia, the two main characters. And it's clear what had been behind their eyes, what had been behind his eyes anyway, is gone. He's not anymore. He is not anymore. There is no more him. There's only the party and what the party has made of him. It works. Brainwashing. If you have sufficient time, sufficient resources, anyone can be broken. These methods were perfected during the Korean War by the Chinese People's Liberation Army against American, British, other prisoners. Nothing is yours, not you, not your thoughts, not your integrity, not your God, not your family, not your loved ones, not yourself. Nothing. You are not yours, you are theirs, you belong to them. Now, I've gone on at this length not to bore you, although I may have succeeded at that. I've gone on at this length to tell you, when I say without limit, I mean without any limit whatever. Can you think of anything that I've forgotten that a person might hold on to, despite the totalitarians? There's a wonderful line at the end of the horrible movie Braveheart. But they can't take our freedom. Yes, they can.
Possibly, though, it might be a little bit poetic. Hope. But even then, that's like...
Right now, I'm playing through the end games of Cyberpunk 2077, which is a video game. And it's a video game with lots of flaws, but it's still, I like the company that made it, so I've played through it. And one of the enemies, or one of the endings, is about as hopeless as a postmodernist novel. I mean, what?
Sorry, I've seen some of the endings. I've never played the game because I didn't want to play something so glitchy when
Yeah,
it came out.
yeah.
It was...
Wait a while. I mean, there are nice things about the game, but one of the endings, and I'll tell you which one, it's the one where you decide to go with the corporations, is a totalitarian ending with no hope. It is absolutely, it's 15 minutes, it takes 15 minutes to play out, of absolute depression. And I played through it. And then the next day I played through a much, much happier ending, where you get the girl and you go off into the desert and it's wonderful. And I'm about sometime this coming weekend, I'll probably play the third ending, which is probably somewhere in the middle. Hope is something that we don't have based on things. Hope is a capacity that we have inside ourselves. You have a capacity for hope. And you might invest that capacity in hoping for certain things. But if one thing doesn't work out, you can hope for another thing. If you don't catch the plane, you can catch the next plane, or you can take a bus, or you can take a train, or you can rent a car, or you can drive, or you can just not go. Hope is a malleable capacity. The key is to take this construct that is you, a personality, and break it apart like Humpty Dumpty and put it back together again in a form that looks like you, that sounds like you, but that isn't you. To a lesser degree, the military does this. It's not brainwashing exactly. But when military training, at least the way it's supposed to be done, I know that there are a lot of things today that seem weird. In other words, our military is becoming so soft that it's giving away its potential edge. But back, quote, in the day, unquote, what the military would do is bring you to a point of physical, mental, and emotional exhaustion and keep pushing. Push, 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 until the person that arrived there, the civilian that was you, breaks. Once they've broken you, they can then put you back together in the form of a soldier, sailor, airman, marine, coastie, or whatever. Now, being a free military, a free society's military, we don't go that far. The key is to interrupt your natural responses to the point where you don't trust them anymore, and then introduce through training a set of new responses that will allow you to function without thinking sometimes. So you hear an explosion and you see people begin to get injured. There's a natural thing in your back of your mind that will take over, and you'll start running, maybe screaming, maybe hiding. You will react to preserve yourself. This is something that transcends your conscious mind. It goes straight into the subconscious. Well, one of the things military training is designed to do is train your subconscious so that instead of screaming and running and panicking or hiding, you get your weapon and you do certain things based on certain stimuli. Stimulus response, so that you are useful and functional in the moment where everyone else has lost their minds. And trust me, you hear a big enough noise, you see a bright enough flash, you begin seeing people actually dying or being hurt in front of you. It is normal for a person to freeze, to panic, to run away, to do all sorts of crazy things, because what's happening is the subconscious mind, get back to you later. Beep. And it's your subconscious that comes to the fore, your instincts to stay alive, fight or flight. Time slows down because your blood gets filled with adrenaline. So military training is designed to train that subconscious. Well, totalitarian societies try to do the same thing. There is no competition in a totalitarian police state. There is no balance. There is no separation of powers. There is no appeal to a higher law. There is no court of appeals. There is no Supreme Court. There is no constitutional right. You have no rights. The whole concept of rights is a pretty fantasy. You are the state. The state's property, the state's resources, and it will use you as it sees fit. You are the parties. Now you might ask, why would people choose this? Before I go on, besides hope, can anyone think of something that might survive something like this? In a totalitarian society, there's no balance. There's nothing that says, well, I have money, so I can be shielded from this or that effect. Everyone is prey. Sometimes the party allows groups to believe that they're above it, but they're not. For example, the wealthy cartel members in Nazi Germany made a lot of money. They had wild parties. They did all sorts of stuff. They lived like little kings and queens, little princes and princesses. But they knew that all of this existence was provisional upon their active cooperation with the Nazis. And if they even slowed in that cooperation, it was all going to be taken away.
It's not very practical, and it's very difficult to break a femur. So that might survive.
To break a what?
A femur. Because there's no
But it's fairly easy to slice a femoral artery.
That's true, but I wasn't referring to the artery.
I know you're referring to the femur. Okay, yeah. Iron breaks bone.
Yeah, but why? There's so many other ways to cause more pain than breaking your femur, and it's so difficult. If you're gonna torture someone...
Except the point might be that there is nothing beyond our ability. We are so powerful that we can afford to lead with breaking the femur. Make you do the dance? The Kazakh of Rasputin. I was thinking of that song this morning. Okay, now what is different, and so tomorrow we'll start with Soviet Russia, is, remember, communism, Marxism is international totalitarianism. It's international socialism. Workers of the world unite. Italian fascism is national. German National Socialism, guess what, is national. Chinese Kuomintang, the Nationalist Party, is national. Japanese state Shinto is national. So totalitarianism comes in an international flavor, a Russian flavor, a German flavor, an Italian flavor, a Chinese flavor, and as many flavors as there are different national groups. we will see totalitarianism take effect in the first place in Soviet Russia next time. Questions, comments, or thoughts? I see none. Thank you for your attention. Bye-bye.
That would be